Welcome to Circular Firing Squad. I'm Marty, a counseling faculty at Kent State University and host for Circular Firing Squad. We've got 7 members, the biggest show ever. This is the big movie show, I guess, that we're doing tonight. 7 members, 7 questions, and 7 answers for each question. Members generate the questions, and we all have to answer them, ranging from the pastoral to the pathetic. Hey, let's keep it short tonight because we got 7 people and 7 answers, and I'll try my best. But movies is my favorite topic, and some of the questions are just so tough because you can't answer them simply. I can't answer them simply. But Elliott's up. Let's see who's with us tonight. So let's go ahead and start. Well, I guess, Elliott, you get to start.
Hi, everyone. Elliott Ingersoll, professor of counseling at Cleveland State University and host of Apply Topically.
Hi, I'm Steph Martyr, doctoral candidate at Kent State University and working as a clinical counselor at a private practice.
What's up, everybody? Mitch Conrad, counselor trainee at Baldwin University and clinical mental health counseling student at Cleveland State University.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Elvis. I come from Bolivia, and I'm an English teacher, and I am alumni at Kent State University, part of the program Fulbright. So nice to see you all and share nice topics tonight.
Hi, I'm Angelika, a doctoral candidate at Kent State University and licensed professional counselor. I'm also the founder of Golden Hour Counseling and Wellness.
Hey everyone, Dr. Gina Martin. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, and I'm happy to be here.
Gina's back.
Yes.
Gina's back. She
So
took a little
happy.
vacation from us, and it's so great to have Gina back. The what is it? Truck stop cake pop lady.
Yes.
And
the
that
gas
she's better
station.
known as the gas station cake pop lady. It's got to be
Yeah.
Casey's, right?
It is. That's the one.
Yeah, because I drove around Illinois Thanksgiving and went past a bunch of Casey's, and I thought, thinking of Gina. Elliott, you've got the first question. It's a movie theme tonight. Elliott brought this to our attention that the Oscars are coming up, so why don't we do something movie themed? So that's how we've prepared our questions. And Elliott, it's to you.
Okay. If you were going to play a counseling theorist in film, who would it be and what draws you to this person?
Okay, I was like, it's kind of awkward being first, but I guess it's good. It's a weird question. But I think I chose Ellis. I chose Albert Ellis because I like challenging people with their shoulds, and I like coming up with weird words or words that really describe things. And even if they have like a uncomfortable feel, like masturbating, I just think that would be fun.
So got the question here, like, if you're going to play counseling theorist in a film, right? So I think for me, really love the last name Rogers for a couple different reasons. I used to like grow up watching like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and that for me, not that like he's necessarily a counselor, but he sort of like felt like one back in the day. I guess I've been told that like I should like dress up for him on Halloween for like multiple years, but I'd really love to see actually like a movie based on like Carl Rogers. I imagine that could potentially come around. So I'd be really interested in like what that could look like. Because I think that provide a better sense for people out there of like what more like modern looking counseling looks like as opposed to some of the older kind of counseling kind of back in the day. So I'd be interested to see that.
I'd probably choose Irene Stiver or Janet Surrey. I'm a huge fan of relational cultural theory. I wrote about them, or relational cultural theory, on my comprehensive exams, which Marty knows about. I naturally gravitate towards theories that are more interpersonal, dynamic focused and how that impacts mental wellness. So Stiver and Surrey were probably some of the early theorists that started to build on RCT that was created by Jean Baker Miller, and they expanded on it to make it include more intersection. They were both like, hold on, RCT is good, but how do we make it better? And they really did this by making it more inclusive. So I would be playing one of them in my film and putting an inclusive lens on RCT.
Well, this is kind of difficult since I'm not very into the topic of guns, but I've done some research. So I could say I would like to see like how Sigmund Freud could relate some early life experiences to current results. So I will go with that.
That's a good one because mine directly relates. some of you know that I practice out of a psychodynamic or sometimes bordering psychoanalytic lens. I'm not trained as a psychoanalyst by any means, but my master's program was psychodynamically driven. So I've had a lot of interest in Freud, and I work with children and adolescents clinically. So the one that I would choose would be Anna Freud. I think it would be really interesting to do a movie, kind of a historical fiction piece on what it was like to be Freud's daughter, and just some of like the emphasis on child psychoanalysis. I think it'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Gina. Freud wasn't my choice, but the idea of doing something about Anna Freud in terms of her contributions, I think, would be very cool to be able to do that. Okay, so people need to get their Google machines out because this goes way back. I first thought it would be interesting to do Timothy Leary. Now, I don't know if you can consider him a counseling theorist. Definitely was a theorist about personality. But, Timothy Leary's had some documentaries about him. It's mainly about the political stuff and the counterculture stuff, but nothing about his counseling and when he worked before he started dropping out and dropping acid. Along with that, Gordon Allport, who I think got a fascinating life because he was associated with Timothy Leary for a good period of time and was had a spiritual transition in the middle of his academic career to become Ram Dass. And Ram Dass was a spiritual kind of a leader and a counterculture spiritual leader. And actually, I did an interview with Al Peso of the psychomotor psychotherapy approach and went up to where he does his work. And we walked around the land and he said, this is Ram Dass's old ashram, which he purchased from Ram Dass when Ram Dass went west, I think. But that's not either one of them. No, the one that I think I would like to portray is Carl Whitaker, and of symbolic experiential approach. Fits sort of my style in a lot of ways of kind of ideas that happen, spontaneity, things like that. And I think he would be interesting to watch. I think he would be an interesting character to watch and see a movie of. Even if it's sort of captures a greater part of the family crucible and that story. There are a lot of other things from his history growing up that kind of, I think, would make for an interesting story. So yeah, Carl Whitaker.
Yeah, I was kind of torn on this. Definitely, my first thought was Carl Rogers. Instead of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, it would be Mr. Rogers' Waiting Room, something like that. But ultimately, I came down on Stanislav Grof, who, of course, is known as a transpersonal theorist. Some people think that he's a crank, but those are people who are deluded with fundamentalist materialism. So, I think I would choose Grof. I think that would be a fun part to play.
Stan Grof was my next choice in that list. So that might be generational from you and I in terms of thinking of those theorists, the transpersonal kind of approaches that Leary and Ram Dass and Stan Grof kind of went into, which is pretty cool. Next question up goes to Stephanie.
Hello. So my question is, are there any movies that portray the counseling process accurately?
So really interesting question, because as someone who hasn't seen a lot of, I can't remember how many movies I've even seen that have had a lot of counseling stuff in them. But one that I did watch recently was Good Will Hunting, and Good Will Hunting had an enormous impact on me because that's not quite the counseling sessions. I've never experienced counseling sessions like that, where I'm thinking of the one piece where Robin Williams has this self-disclosure about how he met his future spouse at a bar instead of going to the World Series. I guess I should have said spoiler alert for Good Will Hunting, but we are talking about movies tonight. So that scene to me was really impactful for a lot of different reasons. Not that I would hop up out of my seat and do some really gestalty stuff, but it certainly showed, I think, the vulnerability of the the therapist there, and I've been wondering how targeted therapist vulnerability and self-disclosure has been coming up a lot for me recently as a new counselor. And I've been wondering exactly I've been thinking a lot lately about how to self-disclose in the best way possible with the best intentions possible, especially stating intentions beforehand and discussing giving the client choice there. But that to me was always interesting because I was I've never counseled like that, but I wonder if there's people out there who really hop into it in such a way, because I imagine that could be impactful for some people.
I'm going to throw Ted Lasso into the mix. Sorry, it's not a movie, but it has one of the best portrayals of therapy I've ever seen, in my opinion. If you haven't seen the show, I highly recommend, and consider this your spoiler alert warning. In season 2, Dr. Sharon is a sports psychologist, and she's hired for the AFC Richmond football team. So this show takes place in England. It's their football, our soccer. And she keeps strong professional boundaries, even when Ted, the main character and the coach of the team, pushes back on her. She doesn't take his jabs personally. She recognizes that this is his armor. And she asks some really insightful questions that not only help the story along, but they're ones that any therapist would ask a client struggling with anxiety and trauma. And she meets him where he's at, especially when they start processing his past relationship with his father and how that impacts current stressors that he's navigating. So, I mean, the only moment that she really does cross some boundary lines and her ethics are a little shaky is when she accepts a gift from Ted, which is a bicycle, after hers got wrecked. Obviously, he did it for the plot because he's a kind and caring person, but that bicycle was probably over $10, which we know is an ethical no-no. So maybe she didn't want to ruin the rapport that she had built with him, but she definitely keeps it because the next scene rolls and she's riding the bike to work. Overall, though, I do think that Ted Lasso does a really good job at showcasing therapy. And this didn't spoil too much, but if you have Apple TV, I definitely recommend to watch it.
Well, I would like to go with some basics. I think the movie Inside Out has some credits. And it helps young adults to understand your emotions. And I think we can remark that because I think that those are the first steps for a whole counseling process. So let the students or patients to realize and accept that they can have anger, they can be happy or have a very sad moment. Sometimes it's okay. So it's okay not to be okay sometimes. So I would consider that movie to be very important in the basics of counseling.
Yeah, my short answer is just no. I think that therapy is so hard to capture in a movie or in a show. And I agree with the answers that have been already stated. I think there's so much about the counseling relationship that comes up in, Hollywood and in these types of settings. The one that keeps coming to mind for me, though, I recently watched Shrinking, and this is an example of what not to do in therapy. He breaks pretty much every single ethical standard. It is egregiously bad. And I think some of the themes there that are present in his relationships with clients are true and ring true. There's this, desire to help. There's this desire to fix. There's so much realness, so much raw vulnerability in that. And I think that, it's a great example of a therapist who's hurting and who is entering into these relationships to ease that hurt within himself. So anyway, it's a what not to do in counseling. And I think there are some great themes that emerge from watching it. And some of the feelings are the same.
This might not come as a shock to folks, but I haven't seen movies with counseling portrayed, period. Let alone the few that I've seen has not been very good. To me, going to see a movie that has counseling in it or a television series or whatever feels too much like work. And that's not why I go to get entertained. I don't want to think about the kinds of issues that happen in counseling. I think here's a shocker. I never saw Good Will Hunting. So Mitch, you did spoil the movie for me. Not. because I probably won't see the film. The first movie I think that was counseling related that I saw was Ordinary People when it came out in 1980. And I had just started practice like the year before with a post-bachelor's degree working in an addictions treatment center. So I have a tendency to stay away from films. The bits that I've seen have kind of portrayed them in poor ways, portrayed counselors in poor ways. And I really don't understand, at least in our field, why many instructors are drawn towards using film clips for instructional purposes. And when we could be using real clips of clients and people instead of Hollywood clips of clients and people. So just not my bag to watch films with counseling in it.
Yeah, I'm with Marty on that one. I haven't seen one that I thought was well done, but I've seen a lot that were poorly done. My favorite is the Terry Gilliam film 12 Monkeys. Madeline Stowe and Frank Gorshin play fundamentalist materialist psychiatrists, and she loses her faith in materialist psychiatry. And of course, I won't do any spoilers, but it's a wonder, probably the best Bruce Willis film in my opinion as well. But yeah, they're all set. They have it all clear in their minds what's possible and what's not possible. And that is, to me, the antithesis of good therapy. So I've seen lots of bad therapy in films, and that's my favorite example.
Yeah, 12 Monkeys almost made my list too, Elliott. You and I are thinking the same sort of style. We've got Stephanie to round us off on this question.
Oh boy. Well, I appreciate all of these answers, and I also appreciate being reminded to go back and watch 12 Monkeys again, because it's just such a great movie. No, I'm going to go with like Gina's first answer, which was no, I haven't. I mean, starting from like, what about Bob, right? Which is just like makes you want to pull your hair out left and right. It's really irritating. But then, it doesn't necessarily have to be a movie about counseling or about a counseling relationship. Because then I was thinking about movies like Nightmare on Elm Street and that kind of place, or where in those movies, it's just, there's nothing that really portrays the actual realistic counseling relationship that I have come across. And it all just makes me want to pull my hair out with the ethical violations. However, I will go ahead and check out Ted Lasso to see something done better. Give me a little hope.
The best part of 12 Monkeys, it was my introduction to Brad Pitt. He is a patient in that movie, and it's like, wow, that's quite a wild stretch for Brad Pitt. And then you see him do another movie, like Seven, and it's like, oh, there's another. I mean, the guy can act. My wife hates him, says he's got a funny lip, and she doesn't like that, but Brad Pitt. Mitch, I think you've got the next question.
Well, and I would say that Brad Pitt did a very good portrayal of mania in 12 Monkeys. He spent a lot of time with people suffering from mania to do the portrayal, and that was pretty spot on.
Okay, let's hop into this one. What's your favorite movie of all time, and why is it meaningful to you?
Oh man, I'm gonna go straight Disney. Lion King is my favorite movie of all time, and it's purely nostalgia and just good feelings. That's my answer.
Well, I would go with a Marvel one, which is the Avengers: Infinity War. I haven't thought around a movie since I watched this for the very first time. I can remember the plot of reducing half of the population, like thinking about the resources and that stuff was really touchy at that moment. Even though that was fiction, after I left the theater, I was like thinking, what if that is something real that is happening right now, and we might be living those catastrophes in some years. So it was like a nice moment to think about what is going on in our world.
Okay, I feel like Marty's going to be mad at me for this, but I'm going to break the rules and I need to stay true to what I'm going to say. I don't love movies, and I know that's not great. But there's a show that I have watched multiple times, probably 3 or 4 times all the way through, Schitt's Creek. is my all-time favorite show. And the reason for it, what keeps bringing me back to it, is I discovered it at a pivotal time in my life. And then when I moved and I lived in a hotel that shared a parking lot with Walmart, it felt like I was in Schitt's Creek. So we had to watch it again. And it just has become such a family icon for us, a family symbol of life transitions and just a source of comfort. So that's been something that really stands out to me. And I have to stay true to it because it's not a movie, and it's a show that I keep coming back to time and time again.
Yeah, I've got that in my watch list, but I think, what is it, 5 seasons or so to watch Schitt's Creek. But the nice thing is 20 or 30-minute things, so I can knock them off in little bits and pieces. Mitch, this is not a fair question. I mean, to select the favorite, it's really tough for me, I guess. And then why is it meaningful to you? Well, I don't know if this is my favorite, but I think I've spoken about this on a previous show, 2001: A Space Odyssey. It was the first movie I saw with my dad. I was 13 years old when it came out, and I think my dad just wanted to go see the film, and so he took me along. And what an introduction to kind of a theatrical movie for me. Then when I went to college and did minors in film studies, or aesthetic English as they called it, Citizen Kane was the first movie that I really studied. And so, favorite movie? I can't say it's the favorite movie of all time, but it's meaningful for me because it kind of really got me to learn about films in a different way. Prior to this, I was going through my list of movies. I have 750 or more movies in iTunes. So I have purchased a lot of films, and they're sitting in iTunes, and I went through them trying to find a favorite movie, and I don't have a favorite movie. I have favorite directors. Woody Allen, I think, is, whatever you think of his personal life and creepiness, does some great films. Stanley Kubrick, David Fincher. So I'll go through and kind of get all of the directors. I'll go through the directors and purchase their films. Hitchcock, Tarantino, Terry Gilliam, which Elliott brought up earlier, Wes Anderson, and even Bobcat Goldthwait. You should look at some of the movies he's put out. Twisted, but really quite good. So, favorite movie of all time? Just not fair. Sorry. I just can't do that.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a toss-up for me, probably 2 aspects of my personality. Stalker by Andrei Tarkovsky is definitely in the top 2 or 3. Even with the subtitles, it is shot so brilliantly. This guy, there's a forbidden zone in the Soviet Union where mysterious things happen, and this guy knows how to get in and out of the zone, and he takes an artist and a scientist in, and there's a room in the zone where you can have anything you want if you can get into the room. I mean, it's amazing, and it deals with all these existential questions and questions about how far knowledge can take us and about epistemology, and I'll watch that over and over and over. That and The Petrified Forest with Humphrey Bogart, Bette Davis, and Leslie Howard. And that's just one of my favorites because I am an incurable romantic. And I've seen that at least 25 times, I think.
Yeah, I don't know, Mitch, if you heard my eyes roll in back of my head when I read what your question was, because I'm like, how do you expect anyone to choose? Because different favorite movies. There's not one recently where I'm like, I have to watch it again. What movie was that? Was there a movie recently that I found interesting enough to watch again right away? No, I don't think so. But, as far as I have kind of answers that are all over the board, Labyrinth is from childhood, and it makes its way in little ways into our house. It's meaningful. People associate it with me a lot from college. They made a giant size stuffed Ludo when Nora was born. It's amazing, but it's also like my friend they did a stage production of Labyrinth. They sent me the poster from the production because they're like, you just have to have it. And I actually have it framed on my wall. So it's kind of the one that has the biggest presence in our house. But then there's movies like The Matrix, which was just a phenomenal viewing experience when you're 17 and you've seen nothing like this before. And it was just so different. And it, kind of changed the way for me about how I could experience a movie, and being so engrossed in it and really getting, just so mesmerized by a movie and something I hadn't seen before. But then to that same, point on a different level, a movie like Midsummer, which is like horror, but it also has this beauty to it. And again, has some interesting points that are being made. So those are the three that I came up with kind of quickly to answer this question. But I agree with Marty. It's not fair.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for your answers. It's definitely realizing now the challenge between like selecting one, because I'm even sitting here and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, like I've got to pick one, but I got to leave out the others, I think I've talked about Spirited Away on the podcast a couple times. I'll hop on to Steph's answer, which is The Matrix, one of my favorite movies, especially because I watched it, and I'm always interested in watching like movies again in my life, like to peel back the curtain a little bit here, like before psychedelic use and then after, like sort of like post use, like what the difference is for me, and what I notice versus what I don't notice. And especially a movie like The Matrix, it seems like there's a lot of stuff there that definitely, based on what, my psychedelic experiences have been about, that like resonates. And the same kind of thing with like even Studio Ghibli movies a lot. Like there's some stuff there, especially like My Neighbor Totoro. Like there's, for me, certainly I wonder if like what Miyazaki was doing, if he was doing anything, that's up to Miyazaki to either say or not say. I don't have any information about that use there, but certainly those movies are completely inspirational. So yeah, thanks everybody for your answers.
Well, we have, our listeners can look at the transcript if you want to catch these movies up. I am not going to try and put links to all of the movies that are covered tonight, but the podcast has in the notes the transcript available, and also you can get the transcripts through YouTube, I believe, to find the movies that we're talking about. Angelika, you've got the next question.
I was going to say, that was such an expansive list of movies that everyone had. I'm going to have to go back and write them down, because all I like to do is rewatch movies. That's why Lion King is my favorite. My question is, if your life was a movie, what does your audience want to see you doing?
Well, I would like my audience to realize how hard can be being a teacher sometimes, watching and realizing our lives after school. Like there's a lot to do with planning, checking stuff, checking homework, grading, and that stuff. And so we can clear that kind of thought that sometimes teachers earn money doing nothing. Well, I'm talking about my context. So if my life was a movie, I would like my audience to realize that.
Yeah, I love that. I think for me, my initial thought was, well, nothing. I don't think it would be a very interesting movie. But I think one thing I would want to highlight and portray is definitely that like act of teaching and all of the hours that go into it and all of the different various tasks that come up and the emotional strain and the emotional struggle. I think it would make a pretty good montage. I also think like I'm a pretty big runner, so having like a training running montage would be essential. And I also play pickleball, so there would be some pickleball montages happening as well. And I think just balancing like family life and teaching and counseling, I think that might be kind of interesting, or maybe it would be really mundane and nobody would watch it. So I don't know. I think that would kind of summarize my life's movie.
Good question. Tough question to answer, because for me, it means I've got to kind of step out of myself and look at what I think would be interesting for other people to watch. I pulled a little trick here. Before the show, my daughter called and we're just chatting, and I said, "Do you want to hear the questions for tonight?" And she said, "Yeah." And so I gave her this question, and she said, "Oh, I know what it is. I know the answer to that is." she tells people what I do, and then people would be interested in seeing how you come up with ideas. I think that would be a boring movie, but she said that's the thing that they get from it. It's like, how did your dad get into Second Life? How did your dad get into podcasting? How did your dad... So people are, from her perspective, fascinated with how I come up with ideas. My answer to that question is, if my life was a movie, what does your audience want to see you doing? I think probably, and I'm feeling this, teaching family therapy. It is the most freeing experience for me. It's the time where I'm the most creative. It's the time where I'm kind of reactive to what's going on with the students around me. And I think it's fascinating teaching, if I might say so. So the answer to that question would be teaching family therapy.
Maybe I took this wrong. I don't know. I think for me, it depends on who's watching the film. I suspect most people would be very interested in the chemical sexual experiments, exploration that marked many of my middle decades. They could probably make whole movies about that. But then the other piece, I would hope, what does your audience want to see you doing? I hope they want to see me making progress on my individuation from the Jungian perspective. I mean, I hope that's what they're cheering for, but it might be the chemical sexual experiments too. Who knows?
So without
Can you not erase that from your mind, Stephanie? Is that like somebody get her some
I thought we were
bleach?
being honest here. Sorry.
No, I'm all for it. Like, no judgment whatsoever. I'm just trying to like think of what to say at the moment. As for my answers, because I'm very entrenched in your answers. Too much so, perhaps. No, but see, because like it's hard because I don't know what I do that's interesting. Maybe especially lately, but maybe I kind of was thinking like when Gina was talking about montages, I was like, well, maybe like one of those montages from like the original Overboard, where she wakes up and does all of this stuff, but like it's just like extra difficult, especially in the beginning, but it just feels like that every single day. So it's like all the hats, but like have that Overboard montage with everything kind of just being like frustrating. You can't do anything simply, but also throw in that I'm also a counselor and I have a capable partner. I mean, it's just life, but maybe they want just to hear all of my snark. Maybe that's how I like entertain people with all of that. I don't know. It's a hard question to answer because I don't think anybody actually particularly wants to watch me do anything.
I think my answers like changed like 4 times since the question was asked in my head. I love this question. It really made me think for me, like what's going on right now. So I was a client for over 15 years before I started to provide counseling. And it has been wild to sit in the other chair and to experience what is going on like in my head as a counselor when I'm sitting with people. I've observed that like the counselors that I've seen since I was a teenager, like all kept things like extremely close to the vest, and that's fine. But I never really got a chance to really figure out like what was going on in their heads at any point in time, like during the counseling process before I'd like hopped into my counseling program and started to be a little bit more forthcoming with like asking some questions. And that process has just been wild for me of like what I'm experiencing on this side versus like thinking back and going like, well, what were my counselors experiencing, right? And like having that as a frame of reference, sort of like a question that I'll likely like never have answered it in my life. But I think it would be the process of like providing counseling and like the reflections on like what is coming up on that side for like a therapist might be engaging. Just a thought.
Yeah, thank you for your answers, everyone. I think for me, if my life was a movie, the audience would probably want to see me overcoming some sort of interpersonal or intrapersonal struggle, where they would probably see themselves in me as like a relatable, messy, quirky character and like how I navigate the struggle. Maybe something that's like me, like how I see myself versus how the world sees me, or time jumping where I'm guiding my younger self towards achieving something or in a certain direction. Or maybe I'm there's some crossover between my movie and Gina's movie, and we're versing each other in a intense game of pickleball where like maybe the last minutes of the film I find some gratifying resolution and also set the audience up for a sequel.
That was one of the tougher questions for me to answer. Besides Mitch's trying to figure out what my favorite movie of all time was. But again, I think it's that kind of, we have to figure out what people would want to watch us be doing that would be of any interest to them. So it's hard. Elvis, you've got the next question.
I would like to know, on your point of view, which is the movie that is a must for teachers to see? Oh, I don't know, for some motivation or some scientific basis or background that you have found, like a movie for teachers that every teacher must watch.
For me, this one was simple and straightforward. I think Inside Out and Inside Out 2 are two movies that counselors and teachers should all watch. I think it helps us relate to other people. I think it helps us relate to teenagers and young children. I think that it really is a great conceptualization of emotion and just some of the situations that come from that, and developmentally, what that looks like.
I hope other people have seen this film. If you have not seen this film, then, rent it. You can buy it on iTunes. For years, you couldn't get a copy of it, at least domestically here in the U.S. You could see bits and pieces of it on YouTube, but it is available now for purchase or, I guess, for rental on iTunes. But this came from a visiting scholar from India who said, Dr. J, you got to see this film. Have you seen this film? You got to see this film. And I think we saw a little of it at the time, and then I put it aside and then picked it up later, and it's really good. It's called, and I'm curious to see if any of the panel has seen this movie yet. 3 Idiots. Oh, it is do the Indian version that came out in I think 2009, not the 2017. We'll use the title and make a Spanish version of it, because the Spanish version seems to be all about the wedding. But this is the story of 3 guys. And why I say this is important in teaching, because you need to watch the teachers in here. You also need to watch the students in this movie, which are the 3 guys. They get into a very competitive college and program. And one guy is just really brilliant, but kind of really off kilter. He'll challenge professors, or he'll retort back to professors' comments, and they have some really stiff kind of comedic professors in the movie. It teaches you something about the classroom that I think is really wild. Well, the movie is 2 hours and 44 minutes long. I will warn you about that. But I picked it up and put it down a couple of times while watching it, but it doesn't lose storyline. The guys get separated. They are particularly interested in knowing this one guy who is the kind of eccentric student. What happened to him? So the rest of the story is trying to find him, to find out how his life turned out after, I think, he quit college or left college or was kicked out of college. The best part is there's a couple of Bollywood musical scenes in it, including guys in the bathroom dancing around and, to a whole Bollywood thing. And then a fantasy, I think, wedding, so you have a whole cast of people doing the Bollywood stuff. So it's a really great movie, a lot of fun. And you learn something about learning and what's important. And also, has anybody on the panel seen this film before? Oh, gotta see it. You'll enjoy it. And I forget who we go to next. We go to Elliott, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. I think Stand and Deliver. That was about dude. It was a fellow in the tech sector who decides to teach mathematics at an urban high school.
Jaime Escalante.
Yeah. And I just love that movie. I found it very inspirational, and I come back to that over and over again. That one grabbed me.
Sorry, I jumped in on you because you stole my answer. You just didn't know it.
Well, it's a good movie.
It's an amazing movie. And it took me until about 5, until the question had already started, because beforehand, and I'm sorry that I did jump in, but I was just like, I thought it too, Elliott. Because before that, my brain just wouldn't let go of The Paper Chase. And that wasn't really the movie that that I wanted to give. That's not the answer I wanted to give. But I think Stand and Deliver is fantastic, and then there's lots of other movies that could be similar. But if I'll also go classy to add on, and maybe Dead Poet Society. It's just another good teaching movie in some ways. But okay, yeah, I'm just another vote for Stand and Deliver.
Yeah, but just to be fair too, I had Dead Poet Society right there by Stand and Deliver, but I'm also like, even I couldn't figure out. I love Robin Williams. I love the story of the film, but the context I could not make any sense of. It didn't relate to me, So yeah, as a teaching piece, I get it, but the context was so alien to me. It was very hard to.
We're like this tonight.
So I'll take a stab at Dead Poet Society. I've been wondering, moving into teaching, like how, like one of the things that's been on my mind lately is like, how am I making other people feel? How am I making students feel? How am I making the learning? What is the feeling inside the learning space? And what is that emotional space like? And I remember Dead Poet Society because I think that Robin Williams just like generally, but I do view in the film that he has a way to inspire and sort of empower, learners. And that's something that, just by like his actions and the way that he goes about teaching in that film, even though like it can come off as exaggerated. I'm certainly no Robin Williams. But I do view that it's an interesting movie from that perspective about like, right, like what is the, from the perspective of like, what is the emotional state inside of the classroom is something that's typically on my mind a lot, especially as I've moved through graduate school, trying to feel out like where are we all like, where do we all like feel like, what are the common emotions that are coming up? What are some of the common themes that are coming up? And so like, I do view like Robin Williams' role in that movie as someone who inspires and empowers others to be.
My answer to this question is Freedom Writers with Hilary Swank. I think that's a must watch for teachers and counselors. But I can only watch movies like this every once in a while, or else I'd be like a puddle of tears everywhere I go. But I feel like everyone should watch this movie at least once. So Hillary plays Erin, a teacher for like at-risk students, and she shows them how to express themselves through writing. If you haven't seen it, a lot of people have. But despite facing a system that tries to like limit them, it really does showcase like the teacher's impact and how that can be so like important, especially when they stay true to their values, and even if that defies the status quo.
Well, I was about to go with the movie Stand and Deliver, but it's already taken. So, oh, by the way, the guy Jaime Escalante is also from Bolivia. So we respect him a lot, and all the teachers around my country is always having this like motivation like him, because he has done a lot of good things in the past. My second option will be Detachment, which is kind of for me, it's kind of a heavy movie because sometimes we don't have like all the right conditions in an institution. And this guy, as a substitute teacher, achieves a lot of things like relating with their students, so motivating them. At the beginning, it's kind of difficult to see because this guy is kind of rude, and at the end, he achieves very nice things for the school.
Gina, you've got the next question.
Okay. So many of you know that I read a lot. I come from a literary background. I did a lot of English major-y things in my life, and I continue to read and write and all of those good things. So my question is rooted in the writing of a film. What is your favorite trope to see in a movie?
I had to kind of look up what trope meant in terms of movies and had to get some ideas. And this might not be the best example of a movie trope, but for me, it's twin brothers or split personalities. And what I mean by that, best case scenario for me is Fight Club. Again, spoiler, two actors essentially playing the same personality. And Then there are others where you have one actor playing two different characters. And I like the little twisted versions of films, you know? So Jeremy Irons in Dead Ringers, which is a David Cronenberg film about brothers who I think are gynecologists, twin brothers who are gynecologists, and they have a patient that they wind up falling in love with. Jeremy Irons does such a good job of the two different personalities in that film. I'm not a big David Cronenberg fan because he does some really kind of twisted, stomach exploding, head exploding, really creepy films. This is kind of borders on creep, but not, well, I don't know. Depends on your creep factor, but not so much. And then, of course, more recently, Armie Hammer in The Social Network playing the Winklevoss twins. So those are my suggestions for tropes.
Well, I think time travel. That's one I absolutely love in films. I love it when it's well done. Time travel. Not much to add to that.
Okay, well, I enjoy just a very clever and intelligent, smart-ass friend or individual. You know, that's the kind of trope that I really enjoy. I like them kind of stating the obvious, but doing it in a way clever or unique or just has an interesting style of communication, but that's also very entertaining and fun. So that's what I like to see pop up every once in a while on my TV or movie screen.
One of the things that came up for me was the idea of the protagonist experiencing some form of like reluctance. And this really always like tugs at like my heartstrings. I can think of some movies where this is an example. I'm thinking of something like Interstellar, and some light spoilers here for Interstellar. The idea of like, Cooper at the beginning of the movie, not wanting to leave. Another one that came up for me was like Paul Atreides and Dune. Really loved the Dune movies. Never actually just ordered the book set intending to like read through the books, but the movies really convinced me of like, wow, I guess I was like really missing out on Dune. Some others I'm thinking about, like, there may be some stuff there with like, I'm thinking of like Gladiator, also The Matrix, some amount of like reluctance there, really where there's a lot of like emotional, like being emotionally torn. That's sometimes something that really resonates with me. So yeah, I would say it's the idea of kind of like the reluctant hero, reluctant protagonist.
I feel like as a romance and smut reader, I love a good enemies to lovers trope, because for me, I like to look at the portrayal of personal growth and the not judging a book by its cover aspect. Like when this trope forces a character to confront their flaws or challenge their assumptions or break down emotional walls, I find that really interesting and grabbing. The journey from conflict to connection really makes the story more meaningful for me.
I would consider all the films that are related with real life. Some of them might be biopics, and if the stories are told in first person, that's even more interesting to me. The last one I could remember was Oppenheimer, for example. And another one that I enjoyed a lot was Jungle with Daniel Radcliffe, and how this guy was a guy from Israel who was lost in the Bolivian Amazonia. So it was very interesting to see how his perspectives of Bolivian nature was in that time. So any film that are related to real life.
These are great answers. I feel so connected to some of them. And Angelika, I'm also a big smut reader, so we will definitely have to connect on that at another time. I have to say I agree with Elliott. I love time travel when it's done well. I've been reading all of the Outlander books. There's like 10 of them, and they're all like 1,200 pages. And then there's a show that they've done. And the trope that I am going to allude to is the MacGuffin. So like something that speeds along the plot. It's introduced early, but it doesn't really have any significance later. So she was a nurse in World War II. And so there's all these like scenes of her helping out and doing all this stuff. And that really speeds along the plot. And it's not really that important, except later she becomes a doctor. So it's kind of that like struggle. So anyway, that would be mine. And it's based on Outlander.
Interesting answers to an interesting question. I've got the final question in our regular series of questions, and I'm interested in a movie that's not related to mental health, but the main character could use some counseling.
First thing that came to mind was a lot of Tom Cruise characters in a lot of Tom Cruise movies, particularly his character in Rain Man. That goes without saying. But I also thought of Frances McDermott in Nomadland. Amazing book, amazing film, both equally terrifying, dealing with people who have been totally displaced and are kind of living out of their vans, out of their mobile homes, out of their trucks. So either one of those examples serves well for me.
Okay, I just realized I had to look up these people's names, but I was immediately thinking, for whatever reason, because I haven't thought of this movie in forever, Election with Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon. And for a while, I was like, oh, Tracy Flick, Reese's character. But really, no, Matthew Broderick's character, Jim McAllister, really needs some therapy. Like, really, really needed therapy. He should have gotten therapy.
So I'm not sure if anyone here has seen Whiplash, but that was the one that came to mind pretty immediately. Story there is of a drummer who joins a band, and I'm trying to remember. I'm so bad with like actors' names and even like whether they're in the movie or outside the movie. But like inside of Whiplash, it's really about like their dynamic as teacher and pupil. And I would say that the form of teaching is aggressive and perhaps abusive at times, and that probably both of them could use some therapy. I'm not sure exactly if it would be something like couples therapy if they're not a couple, but I imagine that would be very interesting to have two of them sit in a room. I love that movie. If you're into drums at all, fantastic movie. Love Whiplash.
Okay, hear me out. Bruce Wayne, Batman, any of them, doesn't matter. But if you were my client, we would definitely address grief and loss, eventually trauma when he's ready. And we would talk about, how fighting the bad guys isn't the unhealthiest way to release his anger, but there's definitely skills that we could supplement his career choice with that may be healthier alternatives. And then we'd work on unpacking relational stress and how his behavior is giving avoidant attachment, especially how he keeps people at arm's length and fears opening up to people, and his very valid fear that he may lose people he loves. So yeah, unfortunately, if he went to therapy and it was successful, I don't know what that would mean for the franchise, but he would get a chance to work on his inner demons, I think, and that's a true hero.
I will go with the Iron Man movies and how Tony Stark developed a very serious personality. But for me, the concealing part was his partner, Pepper Potts. So if you watch like Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, you will see the development of attitude that this guy had through the movie. It's kind of freaky, but I think it matches the question.
All right, I'm going to disappoint Marty one more time and break the rules and say a show. So for me, I would choose Breaking Bad. Walter White is diagnosed with lung cancer, and it's terminal, and it's pretty bad news. And so as a coping skill, he turns to making meth and then selling meth and dealing with a lot of drug dealers and such. So I think that he could probably use some healthier coping skills in dealing with his cancer diagnosis through counseling.
I got to say, though, I thought that character was a poster child for embracing capitalism at 100%.
Yeah, another show I have never seen. So, Gina, you're not going to do any spoilers for me on that one. Just have never seen that show. My answer to this question is Brazil, Terry Gilliam's movie. the idea that this man, it's a dystopian science fiction black comedy, I think is the best way to describe it. Jonathan Pryce plays Sam Lowry, who in the end I think finds his true love, but he goes through so much in that film. It's sort of like that guy needs some debriefing therapy at the end of this movie, or, you know, in the sequel, or whatever. The other one I thought about that I think it's just a great film is Nobody's Fool. And it's based on a Richard Russo book. Paul Newman plays Sully, not the guy who lands the plane, but Sully. And he is such a interesting character. I'm not sure he needs therapy at the end of the film because he seems to kind of have his life figured out. But he would be a guy I would love to sit and chat with, you know, just to find out how he puts it all together. So those were my two thoughts. I am going to throw a curve at everybody here. So I'm going to throw the curve. We're going to answer the first final shot question, and then we're going to come back for a second final shot question. The first question, the curve that I'm going to throw you is the movie scene that you would like to be the lead character in.
It's when they go on holiday in Mary Poppins. It's a lovely holiday with Mary. Mary makes the sun shine bright. Then they do all this dancing with, I think there's penguins dancing and there's chalk drawings and everything's, that's, yeah, as a song and dance person, that's the one.
So Stephanie, since Elliott started this round, have you got one for us?
No, I was kind of okay, but because also I do have an answer, the first one, and it bothers me because it goes back to my other thing, but my other answers before. But I'll say that to maybe make this come true as much as possible, for our first dance at our wedding, we danced to As the World Falls Down, which is the ballroom dance scene in Labyrinth, the song that they play there. So I guess that I want to be Sarah dancing with David Bowie in a ballroom with elaborate decorations and costumes.
Mitch?
Gosh, let's go with Back to the Future when he figures out how to time travel.
Okay. Angelika?
Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba in Wicked singing Defying Gravity.
I will go with a scene of Bohemian Rhapsody of Freddie Mercury's playing the piano for the whole scene in that very big concert. I think that must have been very, very exciting moment.
Gina?
So mine is from Atonement in 2007. Keira Knightley wears this stunning emerald green dress in a dinner party scene. And I saw the movie in 2007 when I was in high school. And I still to this day think about that dress. So that would be mine.
Mine would be, I was going to say any movie that Cary Grant is in, but because I think he's just fabulous. But it's North by Northwest, the cornfield scene, where he has to evade the pilot that's after him. That would be the scene I would love to be in. So final shot question. The movie that others never talk about, but you keep going back to. Elliott?
Well, I've mentioned this on the podcast before, and don't be confused, listeners. It's not Stalker. This one is called Slacker. Richard Linklater's Slacker. Definitely one of my favorites, and totally a film. It kind of mirrors James Joyce's Ulysses. You know, it's just following people through a day in whatever inanities they happen to be engaged in. But yeah, Slacker by Richard Linklater.
Stephanie?
Okay, so first I'm also adding on to my last answer, and I would be in Top Gun, Tom Cruise, just because it's always been a dream to fly an F-16 with Danger Zone playing in the cockpit. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, I think more recently, even though I just don't hear people talking about it as much, but I have been referencing a lot of Sorry to Bother You. And also by extension, The Coup. So all Boots Riley kind of stuff. But Sorry to Bother You, it just keeps popping up in my mind, and I keep thinking about it throughout the day over and over. It's there.
Yeah, certainly for me, Spirited Away, definitely something where, I don't know how many people are exposed to Japanese animated movies, but it's just lovely. I can't, I'm not someone who like throws a lot of suggestions out there. Love Spirited Away. Just one of my favorite movies of all time.
Angelika.
In my friendship circle, we talk about this movie a lot. So it lives rent free in my mind, but maybe not in this circle. It's talked about a lot, but this movie is Legally Blonde. And it just has a special place in my heart. I'm always quoting it, and I chose it because just don't underestimate women. Need I say more?
I will go with La La Land. Sometimes I go and remark the bad habits that I used to have in my relationships, and it's just like it doesn't have like a happy ending, so it always gets me, like kind of thoughtful about how relationships work at the end.
Don't tell me it's not a movie.
No, I'm not going to break the rules on this one, Marty, I promise. So this one's 1986 Money Pit with Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is so classic to me, and I think he's done a lot of things that a lot of people talk about a lot. And Money Pit, I think, is brushed over, and it is a classic comedy in my mind.
When I thought of this question, I thought of it because I've got 3 monitors here in this office. I have my work that I'm looking directly at right now, and over to my left, that's where I run movies or have news going on or something like that. So I tried to think, what is the movie I can just throw up there and it can go? And it's one that nobody else talks about. Very few people know about. Stardust Memories by Woody Allen. This was a movie that came out when I was doing my film study, and it is basically Woody Allen's tribute to Federico Fellini and 8.5. It's his version of 8.5, done in black and white, with a lot of comedy in it, and it's this self-exploration as an artist. Who am I? What am I? And I can just throw that on the screen. I can walk out of the room, get a cup of coffee, come back in, another scene is running. That's the movie for me that nobody talks about, but I keep going back to. Because I don't know, maybe the vibe brings something up in my own thinking about it. So thanks for the squad. Extremely large squad tonight. This has been cool. It's been a little tricky at the buttons on my end. But thanks to Elliott, Stephanie, Gina, Mitch, Elvis, and Angelika for joining us tonight with Circular Firing Squad. Look for some of these characters on their podcasts on the podtalk.net. Make sure to check out the Tech Savvy Professor podcast with Eric and myself, and also Vision Profiles that I do with another Eric about the Apple Vision Pro. Our theme music is from Menage a Quad, Real Swing Shet. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad. Ready, fire, aim.